You are watching the Labatt Postgame Show. I'm Thomas Frank Carr. Happy holidays. I didn't, as much as I love our sponsors, I wanted to be a theme today of the ugly Christmas sweater. You didn't catch it. I wore this ridiculous sweater on the tailgate show. I didn't feel like taking it off. To be honest with you, it's super comfortable. Just like Penn State's win, 49-10 over SMU. The team got it going on the ground in the second half. Really, that powered the win today. Drew Allar. I'm thinking to, excuse me. Of course, I have 38-10. I thought that was wrong. Behind the scenes, as I hate to do this, my computer crashed right before the show. So everything that I had up, everything that I had ready for you, that all went out the window the moment I wanted to go live. So Penn State wins 38-10, not 49-10, excuse me. And Penn State gets it going on the ground in the second half. Drew Allar throws for 127 yards in the win. That was more correct. For some reason, the Purdue postgame popped up when I was trying to read you the stats. And that is not how that game played out today. 127 yards, 59% completion percentage. But of course, the story of the day is the defense. Penn State's defense dominant in the game. Multiple turnovers, 2 pick sixes on the way to fueling this win. Katron Allen, Nick Singleton had another strong performance. They didn't crack 100 yards each, but they did finish the day over 6 yards a carry per carry for each of those running backs. 14 for 90, 11 for 70. This is a good win for Penn State, and it's kind of what we said going into this game. SMU is not as good up front, especially on offense, as Penn State is. Like the team building aspects of where SMU is and where Penn State is in the long run of this was an AAC team not too long ago. That's what played out today. Kevin Jennings played one of his worst games of the entire season. And I think also the offensive line for Penn State didn't play well in this game as well, but they were able to open up things on the ground in the second half at the very least. And on the ground, they were able to do some things we'll get to in just a minute to open up the opportunity for the offense to do something in this game, because it was a struggle for a while. The failed fourth down conversion, couple of things ugly early, but Penn State 6 of 13 finally on third down. Drew Allar using his legs a lot in this game. We'll get to a bunch of our topics that we normally do, including a defensive player of the game. But your thoughts here on the show are what we're going to be fueling the conversation, because it's the college football playoff. Penn State has advanced to the second round. We're in it. Everything we talked about for a while in terms of what Penn State could do, what they could have happened for them, it's all currently happening. And so I want to know what you're thinking about in this game, what you took away from Penn State beating SMU 38-10. I'll go through some of my notes in the game. Tackling wasn't great in the second. I don't know. I'm starting with this, with all the bad things. I don't know why I'm doing that. It's just film analysis guy and what I'm writing down of like, oh no, here's what could have gone wrong. Interesting thing here happened in the game. I thought Nolan Rucci got benched and he was just changing his cleats. So what happened was Penn State gave up, I think it was a pressure or a sack on that third down. It was I'm sorry. It was the fourth down. Drew Allar gets flushed from the pocket. He has to check the ball down. Nolan Rucci gives up a pressure on a stunt. Basically, a similar pressure to what he'd done early in the year. And that was the last time we saw Nolan Rucci for like a full drive. And then he shows up later in the game. And I got to give credit to my guy Landon, who's like, yeah, he didn't like the cleats because he came back out in the game with black cleats on and a full tape job. So didn't get benched. But there was a drive where J.B. Nelson was the left tackle, and they flipped Drew Shelton over to the right side. So now we all know what's the contingency plan. That James Franklin isn't lying. They're going to put J.B. Nelson at tackle if anything happens this year. Javen Williams and, of course, Egan Boyer still very young and growing and developing. Those guys are not ready yet for seeing the field, so they want to go with the veteran guys that are prepared and ready to play, and we've seen a lot of J.B. Nelson throughout his career at Penn State, so getting him on the field. I wanted to clean that up as well because I put some of the out into the universe, and anytime there's an obvious mistake, I always want to make sure we fix that. Tempo was the story of this game for both sides. Both teams wanted to use tempo in this game. Once you get a good play, then you go hurry up, get a base call. And for Penn State, I think the opportunity early in the game that they gave to SMU was the only one that happened in the game. SMU's run game, trap, gap, counter, outside zone, inside zone. They did everything in this game trying to find something that worked. The quarterback option game, nothing really worked in this game for them running the football. Between the tackles, it was just shut down. The defensive tackles, Abdul Carter, defensive ends, denied Dennis Sutton, Kobe King, Zane Durant, Tony Rojas against the run. They all had great games. And if that happened, there wasn't really a whole lot that SMU could do. The thing that I found interesting, though, is that Kevin Jennings, and I think what happened early in the game changed the tectonics for his day overall, because the profile of who he is played out perfectly. You've got a fourth down. You can run for the first down. And he decided to throw it to the tight end. It was a touchdown. Let's be clear. They were saying on air that was a mistake. That was not a mistake. The mistake was he threw it behind the tight end. He was inaccurate on the pass because Jalen Reed, I believe, is who busted the coverage in that situation. Now, there was 4 guys near the line of scrimmage. He was the outside most player on that play in what looked like, a 0 run blitz man coverage situation. He had to decide in the moment whether he was going to cover the tight end or if he was going to cover the flat because the quarterback had broken the contain. Denied and Sutton had let the quarterback outside because he got too far upfield. And so that was the play. It was open. They gambled and they lost early, but it wasn't a bad decision. And that was the personality of Kevin Jennings. Is the offense is somewhat conservative. Well, they'll throw short passes, dink and dunk, get the ball out quickly, mitigate some of the issues of the offensive line. But Jennings is the guy that will bring balance to everything, and he couldn't get it going deep. Penn State was playing a lot of cover 3, soft zones, and then man coverage. And I think part of that, because we've seen them do a couple of different things, they've leaned into cover 2 a lot this year, and they tried to get to it a bunch of times. But SMU had a plan to pull them out of that coverage, but it never amounted to anything. It never amounted to anything positive down the field because the Penn State pass rush was so dominant. It was so overwhelming. Even when they weren't getting pressure, Jennings was feeling pressure. And so once you're in that boat, once you've gone into the deep water as a quarterback and you're starting to look at the pass rush, there was nowhere that offense was going to go that they were going to be able to find some success. And then he starts throwing the ball to the other team. Dom DeLuca had a great game. And you know what? Let's just do it. Let's just talk about our defensive player of the game. Yeah, it's still Abdul Carter. Abdul Carter's the defensive player of the game, but close second to Dom DeLuca with 2 interceptions, and then a sack and a tackle for loss. To half sack, half tackle for loss. DeLuca had a great game, but Abdul Carter and the pressure up front, multiple pressures in this game. I'm excited to see the film and then to get some of the data afterwards about how much pressure they were able to put on Kevin Jennings in the game. But Abdul Carter came up big in a lot of situations. And it was just a complete game by the Penn State defense outside of some tackling issues in the second half. I don't know. Is co-defensive player of the game for Matt McClanahan and McClanahan Law Firm? I don't know. I never asked him about that. I've had 2 like every single game. Of course, the defensive player of the game is brought to you by State College criminal defense attorney Matt McClanahan of McClanahan Law Firm. Matt is a Penn State alum and a super fan. He's been texting me his picks before the game. And here's this one. Here's his pick. 38-14. He's pretty darn close. I had 34-20. I thought they would not implode offensively, and I thought SMU could challenge a little bit. But Matt's correct on this one. The weather and the pressure of the moment and the crowd were absolutely a big thing in this game. The crowd was a major factor for the SMU offense. They made the comment on the broadcast that 34,000 is the number of seats they have in the stadium for SMU, and you could have 3 of those fit in Beaver Stadium. That's nuts. That's a step up in competition. And again, this is the roadmap for if you're going to climb through the college football ranks. Here are some of the things. Here are some of the moments that you have to pass. And Penn State was an avalanche for SMU in this game. And Abdul Carter was a massive reason why. But I also think Denai Sutton, as far as pressure, was good in this game. And of course, Zane Durant was almost unblockable. In fact, they tried to not block him a couple of times. They tried to re-option him as the defensive tackle. Talked to you about Andy Kolnicki doing that in certain situations. Definitely stole that from Penn State when they saw that on film, right? And then they gave a couple of instances where they had him out in space, and he was pretty dominant. They tried trap blocks, which is when you intentionally don't block a guy and then you bring somebody else from another part of the formation and hit him in the backfield. Also called a wham block because it's basically a pull block that you're supposed to meet the guy in the backfield. It didn't work. Nothing between the tackles worked. Kind of the same thing in the first half for Penn State as well. Nothing between the tackles really worked on the ground. And so Penn State had to go a bunch of different ways in the second half to get the ball out to the perimeter and get some of those plays to Nick Singleton and Katron Allen, which were what fueled this particular game. Like we talked about, 3 combined touchdowns, 190 yards on the ground. Drew Allar chipping in some in scrambling situations and in third down. But the offensive line struggled early to get that outside zone game going, which is what I was wondering if that would happen. When you use a tactic in a previous game and then you try to recycle it the next game, the other team is hyper aware of it. So if you're going to run tempo to try and run your outside zone and get the big bodies up front moving, they're going to be ready for it. And that wasn't necessarily successful. What worked this week was just blocking. Front side, 2 tight ends, overloading one side of the line and forcing the smaller linebackers and safeties to fill gaps on the front side. And then running outside of that, getting into space, pin and pulls, and some tight end lead blocks for the Nittany Lions runners out in space. And that really worked for Penn State's running game to chip into the effort and control the second half. T. Frank has the Center County fashion stride in sweaters. Yeah, I don't know if this is a fashion trend. I doubt that anyone's going to follow this, but it's fun. Brett here, he says that block on the first INT was when I knew the game was over. The blocking on the first INT, that was the Dom DeLuca block, I believe, for Abdul Carter getting Jennings. Yeah, when they were able to convert that for a touchdown, that was a pretty big moment. Greg says, did anyone see this game unfolding the way it did? No. I thought SMU would be more competitive on offense, and I thought Penn State would do more in the air with the passing game. I think if that's one area where you come away from this game, and maybe some people feel that way, the passing game was not super efficient today. I thought there were... So here's what I noticed early in the game. And this is the hard part, is there was not a lot of coverage of being able to see the safeties on this game. There was a lot of close-ups on the formation. So didn't get to see a lot of what the coverages were. But typically, SMU runs cover 3, which means the seams of the defense are open. You don't have a big, wide open framed window in the middle between the safeties. There's a safety in the middle, and you have to hit the seams in between the corners up the hashes. You know, you've seen it before. They ran Tyler Warren up that multiple times. Allar didn't take the shot a couple of times. One time he took it and missed, and then that was pretty much it for the day. That was it. And so there was, again, it was a game of selective shots. They felt like they wanted to run the ball in this game. They wanted to play ball control, and especially when the defense gets those turnovers early, it became a situation where you don't need to do that. You don't need to force the issue, so you can play Big Ten football when you have the lead. And you saw James Franklin's vision of the quarterback in the offense and the team that doesn't make mistakes usually wins the game. One quarterback throws 3 interceptions because he's trying to do too much. The other quarterback tries to play within himself and manage the offense and be a caretaker of the game. And while it's not sexy, they won the football game 38-10. Now, and again, it's because that there was not an offensive threat on the other side. Had something happened and Penn State had to push, absolutely, I do believe that they would have had to unlock a little bit more in the game. But they started to play a little bit shorter, more quick game, because the other thing is a cover 3, when you have zones, you can find the intermediate areas between the zones and you can pick your spots to throw. Some soft corners, some stop routes, a couple of double slants. That is kind of the diet of the game, which wasn't going to lead to explosive big-time plays, but it was effective for what they needed in this game. Let's see what we've got in the chat. So those are my initial thoughts here on the game. Get to your thoughts here in the Blue White Illustrated live chat. Stephen Light says, "What was it all coverage today, T. Frank? Allar had a good game, but seemed off." Yeah. So I do think that I don't want to say he was rushed, but I agree. It felt a little off, and this is where I don't know what the coverages were. I don't know what he was seeing and if he was being careful or if it was just not open. That's the hard thing is we know that he checked down and we know that he held the football, but unless you were at the game and you could see the routes live, and if you're following the routes, then thank you. Like football. But from our vantage point here, I can't really tell you if he missed a whole bunch of deep shots and he went into a shell or anything like that. I thought he was fine in terms of accuracy overall. He missed the one throw to the out route he missed to Trey Wallace. I do feel like the offensive line in pass protection underperformed just a little bit. But part of that was one of the situations I'm thinking of. It was JB Nelson at left tackle. And I'm going to give him a pass on that one. But there was more pressure on Allar today. And then he started doing some things that we haven't seen him do all year, where he held onto the football and kind of ran into one of those sacks where Drew Shelton gave up a sack. No, it's throwing me off because it's 66 and 56. And I think it was JB Nelson that gave up the sack. I have to go back and watch the film because now I'm just doubting everything I've seen today. But there was one play where Allar kind of ran into a sack when he was trying to escape the pocket. And you're allowed to have off games. I think he was very good in his process today of, where he's trying to go with the football, but some of those late decisions. So the mesh early in the game where he kind of, tries to shovel past the ball to, I think it was Liam Clifford. He just didn't get anything on it. And we've seen him do that sometimes where the late decisions, if he's not fully convicted in what he's doing, the ball kind of comes out of his hand half-hearted. So you're left with these impressions and these visions of how Drew Allar played, but it wasn't necessary for him to correct any of those things in this game. And it might not be next week either, or the week after. This bowl schedule is just killing me. It's the week after. Next week is Christmas. Merry Christmas, by the way. That's why I'm wearing the sweatshirt. Ryan says, seems that once the offensive line proved pass pro is an issue, Allar and Andy Kotelnicki stopped being aggressive with the passing game. Yeah, I think that there's some truth to that. I also think that like we said, the defense was a part of the conversation with how all of that was playing out as well. Of course, this is the Labatt Postgame Show. I'm Thomas Frank Carr, bringing you thoughts about that game. I think it's a pretty simple narrative of Penn State was better in certain areas, and we all saw Jennings kind of implode as a quarterback. But the analysis coming up tomorrow, BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. I'll get into the details and tell you more of what I saw. I'm not sure in the opening salvo if we talked enough about cover 3. We're going to get back to that in a second, because I do think that the tempo and the conversation there is worth diving into. But we're going to do that a little bit further, either later tonight or tomorrow morning at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. You can try us out for just $1, and you'll get a week of access. You can have as a stocking stuffer for a friend. You're literally spending. What's more important, or what's a better gift? A lotto ticket that you put in their stocking, or you hand to them at work on Monday if you're going to work on Monday, or you say, hey, I signed you up for a $1 subscription to BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. You get a week's worth of actual information, actual things that you will want if you're a Penn State football fan, and then they can decide if they want to go all in with us for a year after that 7th day, or just go all in right now. It's not all that much that it's not a good Christmas present as well. You can check it out again, BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. We'll have a film study. But this is the Labatt Postgame Show. So if you're freezing your butt off, there's a Canadian beer for you that would have kept you warm the entire time. And that, of course, is Labatt and Labatt Blue Light. When it's time to kick back and watch the game, grab a Pilsner that's as pristine as Happy Valley itself. Labatt Blue and Labatt Blue Light deliver unmatched taste that goes down smooth every single time. Or, it's not, because it's got alcohol in it, it's not going to freeze when you're at Beaver Stadium or you're in the parking lot before the game at 9 a.m. Your mitten is, keeping your hand warm, but outside is keeping it ice cold, and it's not going to freeze. It's going to make you warm once you put it on the inside. So whether you're tailgating with 100,000 fans at a playoff game or watching from the couch in the warmth of your own home, Labatt Blue and Labatt Blue Light are your go-to for unbeatable drinkability. Bleed blue and white, drink blue and light. Find Labatt products at Beverage Express, 1021 Rittner Highway in Carlisle. Please drink responsibly. Labatt USA, Buffalo, New York. I was joking with Kevin, who's the sponsor, our Labatt rep, who's the sponsor here in the show. And I apologize for how much I've butchered that. But now that we're into the postseason, I'm nailing it. I'm absolutely nailing that one. So I'm very pleased that we get another game and I get another opportunity. Speaking of another game and another opportunity, Penn State's going to the Fiesta Bowl, everybody. That is absolutely happening. That is, we can say that with confirmation and clarity now. But if they win that game against Boise State, a Mountain West team, group of 5 team, they're on to the Orange Bowl. So collegiate athletic travel. They're going to take you to the Orange Bowl if Penn State wins. South Florida at this time of year, January, with palm trees. You can be part of the action with the all-inclusive bowl game travel brought to you by Collegiate Athletic Travel, a national leader in sports fan travel. Over 50 years in partnership with Center for Travel, your state college-based go-to companies for Penn State bowl trips. Check them out at athletictravel.com or call 814-238-4987. We're talking beachfront hotels. We're talking shuttles to the game, air-inclusive packages. You get a round trip from select Pennsylvania cities, deluxe hotel accommodations on the beach, airport and game transfer, pregame events. You get tickets. You might even see some special celebrities that show up and are part of the package. And as always, they make your bowl trip what you want, not just get you there. Most travel agencies, or just if you buy a ticket on your own, you're out there in the wilderness. You've got to fight through the airport terminal and everything. Here's the thing. If you're going with them on their chartered flights and they go to the Orange Bowl, the bus picks you up from the airplane. You get the VIP treatment. So sign up for a trip you want to take, not just a trip to the game. 814-238-4987 or athletictravel.com is where you can go to sign up and pre-sign up for that flight right now. So appreciate them joining us here for the postgame show. And of course, we've got more great content coming up after the postgame show. We've got James Franklin's press conference. You can hear what James Franklin had to say about this game. And of course, you can hear our instant analysis from the field, the guys who were at the game, to talk about what they saw in person at Beaver Stadium. All that coming up here on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. Don't need to go anywhere for your post-game content. Appreciate everyone being here. And as always, I should say this earlier in the show. I usually get to the very end, but please, Penn State's going on in the CFP, right? We know that they're going to be playing New Year's Eve. We're going to be here, win or lose, on New Year's, like at midnight. So sign up right now for that experience by subscribing to BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. That one is free. I'm sorry, the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel is free, and it's basically free for $1 at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. Bruno says, hard to play in the cold. Penn State ready to play Big Ten football and field position. SMU tried to do their usual. Doesn't work with a 10 real feel. Thank you. Bruno, I actually think Penn State came out a little slow today, too. I'm glad you brought this up. There are some guys on this team from the South. Jalen Kimber looked like he played corner in the SEC for the first couple drives. They settled down, but early in the game, I thought it was going to go a very different way because, you let the receivers behind you in man coverage, a couple of holding penalties, and that game could have gone differently if one of those passes is caught and they get down and they get a touchdown. What you saw from Cam Miller at the end, not trying to pick on him, but that post touchdown from the slot, like if those things happened early because Penn State came out a little bit sluggish too, even if you're used to it, playing in the cold is still you still have to adjust to it. And so I do think it was overall, in the end, Penn State had more of an advantage because Both of their offensive line and defensive line are better than SMU. What did SMU run for in this game? 1.6 yards per carry. Their starting running back, 18 carries, 62 yards. Almost respectable, 3.4 yards a carry. But with all the sack yardage, kind of an abysmal day on the ground. In the second half, I think the tackling also had something to do with the cold. When you're up by 28 points and there's not enough drives left for SMU to mount a comeback, I think maybe some of the tackling late in the game got a little bit rough. Nothing I would be concerned about because they're guys that were typically good tacklers that were making those mistakes. So let's talk about tempo, because tempo was SMU's plan. And we kind of talked about it early in the show, and I don't know that I got into the meat of it. They run a super fast tempo. And again, that's what Oregon did in the Big Ten championship game, but this is something SMU's done for a while. And Penn State was ready for it in this game. From what I could tell, the plan was simplify the defense, and they still had some communication issues just for lining up. But early in the game, Penn State tried to play cover 2 when running tempo, and the offense went 5 wide. They went empty. And that means if you're going to play cover 2, the field safety in cover 2 has to be aware that he's got to get downhill. Like, sure, I'm playing the deep half, but really, I've got to have an eyeball down there. Schematically, it's not a great situation to be in. Zion Tracy pointed that out right before the snap, and then they gave up a 10-yard pass to the tight end. After that moment, when SMU went tempo, Penn State basically played one of 2 coverages, cover 3 or cover 1. One high safety in both of those situations with, more underneath defenders than there are defenders in the secondary. So that is a schematic decision that once they start playing fast, Penn State started playing some of those basic coverages. The other thing about cover 3 is you have an extra hat in the box, and Penn State didn't need that. What I think the plan would have been is that they wanted to play with a light box and take everything away. So you have 2 linebackers, 4 defensive linemen. That's it for the offense to cover the running game, the quarterback and the running back. And then you're going to play space by having your slot corner out there, playing outside of the box, and then 2 deep safeties. So you take away those deep shots that they want to take every once in a while. You can rotate a little bit easier when you're playing too high into different looks. You can start sending safeties at different parts of the offense in the run game to try and run blitz. But once that happened, where they needed to kind of simplify the offense and play faster, simplify the defense and play faster, they got into more of those, what we've seen from Penn State this year, which is man coverage. The part that has been interesting is they don't play a lot of cover 3. It's in there. They can play it. But when you play cover 3, you give up those easy underneath throws that Penn State was getting on the other side of the ball. But if you're going to simplify your offense or your defense in order to combat an offense that's going up tempo, you have to do some compromising, right? And that's where I think they kind of shifted the game plan, and then it was, lights out for the rest of the day. Blue and White 86 says James Franklin won the big one. Great for recruiting. You guys agree with that? Because we were making the joke that this wasn't a big game, because halfway through the broadcast, they were saying that SMU shouldn't be in the college football playoff. And so is this a big game? Because this has been the conversation of, like, you could not win a big game, which is such a fluid definition of what is and is not a big game. This is absolutely a big game. They had to win this game. Losing this game was not an option because SMU is not as talented of a team. But the perception and the bias against Penn State in big games has been that, right? So this is great for recruiting. It is. They're advancing in the playoffs. They are on these island games with all these eyeballs on them. But you're still not going to get people agreeing with you, Blue and White 86. I'm not saying I disagree. I'm just saying, I don't think that that's going to convince everybody that James Franklin won a big game. All right, we're already talking about Boise State, and I'll be honest with you. I had intended on having more Boise State prepared here for you, but then Penn State got a bunch of receivers and visiting in the transfer portal, so I started watching a bunch of other things that were not Boise State earlier this week. And so, yes, Ashton Jeanty is a dynamic running back. he is going to be very, very, very good. I don't know anything about the rest of the team other than that. So I don't know what we're talking about here in the chat. If you got any questions about this game, we could definitely talk about that. But you can also go over to the, somebody was talking about this. Dom DeLuca suggests this. I didn't know what I clicked on when I got to this one. I'll be honest. Larry says Dom DeLuca suggests there's an existence of sub DeLuca. Yeah. Dom DeLuca was great in this game. I do want to break that play down if I can talk to you about his second interception, because the first one is easy. Free runner up the middle. The quarterback floats the ball off target for an interception. The second one, though, was Dom DeLuca being very, very smart and good at football. So they're at near the goal line, and Penn State's run blitzing. They've got a free edge defender. Abdul Carter has I think he had the dive player, so that means he has the running back. And Dom DeLuca has the quarterback. So you can just attack, right? You can just come downhill, you can attack the mesh point, or you can do what he did, which is read the quarterback's eyes. Because in that situation, if you've got the quarterback and he's got an option stance, you've got two options that it could be. A run, and in that case, you're in position, or two, an RPO, in which then you need to get in the passing lane. So DeLuca, instead of, seeing the red meat and attacking the quarterback, plays it like a pass, gets his hands in the air, bats it up, and gets the interception. That was entirely a cerebral interception. And then, of course, luck on the bounce, but excellent job by Dom DeLuca in that situation to play the situation well, to understand the football context. Reminds me of like a baseball player. I know nothing about baseball. I know nothing about base running or about the situational awareness that baseball players in the infield need to have about how do I turn the double play? Where do I go with the ball? If the ball is here, what do I do next? Don't know anything about that. But it is about options. It is about the different scenarios that can play out. And Dom DeLuca, if you watch his eyes on that play, absolutely had a bead on what was happening, which is why I wanted to make him the defensive player of the game. But when you're 6'3", 260 pounds, and you run in the 4.4s, and you're just the best pass rusher in the playoff, you get defensive player of the game. I don't want to say by default, but pretty close to by default. Penn State's defense dominates in this game. I'm Thomas Ryan Carr. If you're checking out the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel for the first time, if you're here on the postgame show, I do film analysis for the Nittany Lions at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. You can check all that stuff out later this weekend. Other notes I have from the game. We got most of this done already. This is like the game. We won this game in the first half. Let's talk about that drive. That brings up a good point. After Penn State scores its second pick six, the offense gets the ball, and I think they got the ball at the 5-yard line. That was an opportunity to win the game in the early second quarter. Go up 28-0, put together a 90+ yard drive, get a touchdown. You can win the game in the first half. You can absolutely demoralize the team, or then you get up so high that you can just play keep away, and it might feel like there's a comeback, but is there a realistic opportunity for a team to win the game? Penn State didn't need it, but that was a missed opportunity for the offense to plunge the dagger into SMU. And I think that's one of those situations where you were off. You missed it. James Franklin talks about there's 4 to 5 play calls a game that define a game. That 4th down sneak was not a bad call. I do think that there's a situation where going fast there, because they broke the huddle, they got up to line really quick, and they snapped the ball very fast. The offensive line needs a chance to get its cleats in the ground. Now, you are also giving the defensive line that same opportunity. But Nick Dawkins is 290-some pounds. The nose tackle on the other side is 350. So I don't know what the best opportunity is. Obviously, it didn't work. And we're criticizing the result here over more than the process, because I don't have a problem going for it on 4th down in your own territory. I really don't. The problem, I think, was, I guess, I would rather be sure that my execution is going to be good. And sometimes when this offense rushes, they don't execute well. They have a hard time going fast in certain scenarios and still nailing it. You know, Drew Allar gets sped up sometimes. The offensive line has some issues with getting the right gaps and getting the right play call. Executing the right blocks when they're going fast. That's the situation. I guess that's what I'm trying to say is I would rather in that situation, even if I don't like what I see, reset, call timeout, whatever you want to do. But it's not that big of a deal. It could be later. And those are the areas where we're going to see a different opportunity for Penn State to make a different choice. And also, I think we'll see a different game plan because, again, this game was not necessarily one where Penn State's offense had to force the issue. They did not need to be aggressive because they were able to win the game with a style of play that was more conservative than this. Sometimes a punt is a good play, says Mike K. On fourth down on your own 20. Sure. Yeah. Sometimes a punt is a good play. A punt is also the best of two bad situations. So good, now we're getting into the semantics of what is a good play. Sorry, what are we talking about with DeLuca fake news? What are we talking about here? I don't know what we're talking about. What did I say? Sometimes words come out and I don't know what you're talking about. It says, easy with the DeLuca fake news. The heathens will crucify you for that. I said he was good football. Is that what I was saying? That he's a good football player? Oh, I see. Okay, so we're being sarcastic. Sorry. The internet is hard to read sometimes. C. Paul King says, hey guys, just getting in here. It wasn't a perfect game, but feel very satisfied and excited for the next few weeks. We are. Penn State has the opportunity to play all the way to the Orange Bowl if they're able to get past Boise State. And I think that is, I don't know how to gauge this conversation because everyone's going to discredit that, but they are winning all the games. They're winning all the games they're supposed to win. And they're going to go up against either Notre Dame or Georgia if they're able to beat Boise State. And they're going to face another real test. And we're going to see what it is to play against an SEC team or an independent team that played a kind of a soft schedule so far this year. That, I think, is the most interesting thing. I figured out how I feel about the playoffs now. I want to see Penn State, Notre Dame playing for that opportunity because both of those teams, you could make the case, have played very soft schedules. Penn State less so, when I think the best win was Louisville for Notre Dame off the top of my head in terms of like when they got into the meat of their ACC schedule. It will be the Poser Bowl, maybe the Poser Orange Bowl down in Florida, because they we'll see which one of those teams has the opportunity to win a big game. And Big Spirit says, T. Frank, anybody on Boise who has a chance to stop Tyler Warner or either of our large pile for running backs? You weren't here earlier. I promise you, I would have watched some Boise State film if I had had the time, but I did not have the time this week. So I don't have an answer for you. But basically, my answer is probably not. But I also don't want to be, taking anything away from Boise State that isn't due at this point. I think Penn State's already almost a 10-point favorite on a neutral field, traveling 2 time zones. But that's going to be the task, right? Is get the offense humming and have a complete game. Some people were talking about wanting a complete game out of this performance and not getting it. And I think that's still a fair conversation to have, but I don't think they definitely needed it. Rob says this feels like the 49-10 Purdue live stream. We just want to CFP bring the I promise you guys like 60 minutes of analysis, and I think I threw my back out in 10 minutes of Penn State's corners were better than the receivers, and Jennings threw the ball to the other team because they got pressure, and he was immediate. Like automatically influenced by the pressure up front from Penn State's defense. Crypto Ducat says, I don't understand how the offense could look so good against a really, really good Oregon defense and look so inept in the passing game just a few weeks later. Call me confused. Part of it is, Crypto Ducat, is that the scheme matters to me. What you're trying to do on the other side of the ball. Oregon runs a lot of zone, but they run a lot of zone defenses that Penn State has been better at cracking than sound cover 3 with enough pressure up front where Allar couldn't sit back there all day. I do feel like he was a little hesitant to pull the trigger at times, but there are two things there. First off, the style of coverage, and then Allar's mentality. We talked about it in that game. Before the game, we talked about that after the game. The offense was aggressive intentionally. It was purposefully aggressive. They came out and played this game balanced, where they didn't need to press because, again, it all matters. Context matters. SMU's a good football team. They are not Oregon. Penn State basically didn't need to rip off the safety harness and go balls to the wall in this game. So they didn't. And that's it. James Franklin is going to coach a game. Andy Kotelnicki is going to call a game to win the game, not to put up points and not to show off. It's all ruthless efficiency of trying to win the football game. Now, the most efficient way to score to win a game is to score a lot of points. But if it's not happening, don't force it. That's how I read this conversation personally and what I hear from James Franklin and what we see play out. Because, again, SMU gave the ball over 3 straight times, 2 of those leading to touchdowns. In the Big Ten championship game, as much as I love the way Allar played, the aggressiveness, the confidence that he displayed, he threw 2 interceptions. One of them that gave Oregon points. The other one that ended the game. So that is how I think they viewed this game. They were going to try and take some shots as they kind of revert to who they are, which was, we're going to play ball control and we're going to take some shots. And the shots never really materialized. And without seeing like the footage, without seeing the game film, I can't tell you if there were any shots to take or if Allar was being too conservative. And that's where, the immediate aftermath here, I want to be careful about that. Because I think there is this view of Drew Allar that he goes into a shell of himself and he's super conservative. And he's not turning down too many wide open touchdowns. Everyone misses some. And you need to be allowed to miss some. But if you're going to do this and you only have 5 or 6 opportunities a game, you take one and miss it. And then the other maybe one isn't there. And then you miss one of not seeing it. Tyler Warren down the seam was one that they took and missed. Then you're down to like 2 opportunities. And so just the averages didn't work out for Penn State to take more of those shots today. He Crypto Ducat back and says, I don't think the passing game looked consistent or confident, even in a scaled back version. I agree. Yeah, I think it was off today. And they just put it to bed and started running the football. Let the defense take care of it. Run the football, especially in the third quarter. And this is where, kind of going back, and I got to look at my drive charts here, because in the third quarter, from what I remember, they basically just leaned on the run game. So Penn State coming out, they pass a couple times, they get a field goal opportunity. And then after that, it's the run. They had a 7-play drive for a touchdown that was all runs. And then the game was over. So they didn't need to fix and adjust. They didn't need to, okay, what didn't work in the first half, we're going to get back to that and we're going to fix those things. They were able to get some of that stuff in the first drive, but then they gave up 2 sacks. So that didn't, again, the passing game from a pressure perspective was not setting up a good situation for Allar to find the seams and the holes in the defense that floods the field with a lot of speedy, athletic coverage players. And so that's part of the conversation here as well. Can we take the training wheels off Allar in the passing game? It was atrocious and sophomoric. Well, way to put a fine point on that. That is, Yeah, it's frustrating. Like, I can understand why it's frustrating to watch, because here's what you see when you're watching the game, right? You see Drew Allar holding the ball and looking around, just staring at things. Let's take the third down play, the very first play of the pass of the game on third down. They're running a play called mesh, and when you run mesh, you're generally expecting man coverage. Now, it's the point of that play is it works against both man and zone. I think in that situation, Allar was too tentative to make a decision. So he's trying to play the zones against each other. He's extending the play. He's got Katron Allen running on a wheel route, and he's got Liam Clifford sitting down over the ball, waiting for the football in the hook curl zone. He's trying to get that linebacker to decide, and he's worried that if he throws the ball, that guy can pivot and undercut it and get an interception or a PBU. And if he just throws the football because he's got an alien level arm strength, there's an opportunity. Just the decisiveness of the game. I do think if you're talking about was he decisive in this game, he did not feel decisive. But again, what is the thing that he was expecting? I know what they were expecting, but that game gave you zero context of what the coverages were. And so that's where you got to, I think, put a little bit of a pin in it to find out exactly what he was seeing. But generally, the pass rush got home more than they should have. Again, we're putting this in perspective. Oregon's pass rush, a defensive line of aliens, didn't get home as much as SMU. That is the offensive line underperforming in this particular game, in that particular context. But they were able to run the ball and get the game out of hand very quickly. So I think on that note, we're going to get going. James Franklin's press conference coming up here in a little bit. Instant analysis from the guys down on the field or wherever, if they can get to the field, if it's too cold out there, if they're doing it in the tunnel. I don't necessarily know today. But we're going to get you all that stuff here on the BWI live show and on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. Appreciate everyone being here. We've got Boise State on December 31st in the Fiesta Bowl. Penn State takes on Boise State. We will be there. Blue White Illustrated will be there. We'll be doing the postgame show, the tailgate show. Everything is all systems go all the way into the new year. So I'm Thomas Frank Carr. For everyone here, we'll be back then. And of course, we've got Christmas next week, Monday, tentatively. James Franklin is going to have a press conference at some point. We're also going to have the BWI live show. A lot of stuff coming up on Monday, so stay tuned. If you subscribe and enable notifications, you'll know when all of it happens, so you don't need to worry about it. You'll just know. And you'll hear what James Franklin had to say about this game and the next one. We'll talk to you then.